Testing, testing. Testing.
Well, it's time for us to begin. I'd like to welcome you to this beautiful Chief Joyce Dugan complex, where we are privileged to have a forum tonight. This issue's forum will feature the candidates for the North Carolina General Assembly, seats for Senate District 50 and for House 119. Joining us is here for the Senate seat, Jim Davis declined to attend. For the North Carolina House, we have Mike Taggart and Joyce both here. We welcome you all very much. The organizers' plan for this evening is to help the citizens of Eastern Bend and all of Western North Carolina to better understand how the candidates will address issues posed by the sponsors, which I will introduce in just a moment, and to candidates themselves a chance to learn which issues are most important to the Eastern Bend and Cherokee members that may be here tonight. I'm going to ask you, after they finish, to hold your applause until the very end. And I think that the first thing I want to do is let you know just a little bit about these candidates themselves. We start with Jane Hicks. Jane Hicks believes that Western North Carolina deserves strong education, a pristine environment, a clear plan for economic recovery, increased access to quality health care. And she knows that with an educated, healthy workforce, we can and will move forward. Jane's major career years were spent in public education as a counselor, school psychologist, lead teacher, and as a Western North Carolina regional science specialist. Jane also started her own business, becoming a national science and math consultant, working with schools in over 45 states. Upon her retirement from the education world, Jane entered Vanderbilt University and obtained a master's degree in nursing in 2008, graduating with honors and passing her boards to become a certified pediatric nurse practitioner. Moving on to Joyce, these are things we want you to know about him. He says, I'm running to serve the citizens of Haywood, Jackson, and surrounding counties in the North Carolina legislature with a vision to expand high-speed internet to every household and create better jobs, educational opportunities, and healthcare opportunities for all our citizens. Joyce is an architect and a small business owner. He served 3 terms in the North Carolina Senate and 2 terms in the North Carolina House of Representatives. So there you have Joyce. And now I'd like to introduce Mike Taggart. Mike says it's been 100 years since a conservative representative was elected to this district seat, and it would be my honor to be elected as that conservative representative to be the voice of this district. Over half of my life has been spent serving the public in emergency services, and this life experience gives me a very broad understanding of public service and the needs of the public.
much rather.
The General Assembly has moved toward what many municipal leaders consider local government overreach, such as overturning Charlotte's non-discrimination ordinance, eliminating privilege fees, and targeting Asheville's water system. The North Carolina League of Municipalities wants to re-establish authority for city-initiated annexation of donut holes, or those areas of land that are completely surrounded by municipal territory, and categories of right-of-way, those accepted for maintenance by either the city or the state of North Carolina Department of Transportation, and in which there are no registered voters. The question to you folks is specifically, do you support city and town control over annexation? And more broadly, where do you stand in terms of local government rights? Jamie, we could begin with you.
Thank you. That's a great question. I certainly believe that local government should have their rights. I'm very concerned about what the General Assembly is doing right now in pushing themselves into our local governments and making decisions. Some of the things that they've done, they've taken away the privilege tax, which brought in money and revenue to the local governments. They've also gotten rid of the impact tax, which if a large industry was coming in, or an industry, and they were going to have an impact on the sewer and water situation, they were asked to pay an impact tax. That's been taken away by the General Assembly. Also, locally, we can think about the threat that we had of fracking. I know Jackson County passed a fracking ordinance. The state did away with that and said that local governments could not make their own decisions with regard to fracking. I know that the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians also had their ordinance, I think, on fracking against that. As far as donut holes, I think they should be brought in to the towns because they will eventually be there anyway. There was a situation in Durham where I think American Tobacco had their own donut hole, and they were using city water and sewage facilities, so they asked them to. It became part of Durham, and also there was one situation in High Point. I think that was just sent on to a finance committee. But I am definitely in favor of local government. As a state senator, I would want to ask ahead of time how this bill would impact local government. I would want to work very closely. I believe in government of the people, for the people, by the people, and local is better. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a moment to step out.
Well, thank you for the question. I guess I agree that local is closest to the people, and it is good to listen to local opinions. In our state, we have on annexation, we have had a range of issues. Sometimes local jurisdictions have overstepped and annexed without providing services, and we've tried to set criteria for establishing services and allowing those citizens to be annexed to vote upon it. I think that's a good criteria, and I generally have supported that. I have been in a situation in Haywood County where even though we polled every citizen that lived in the district, polled every land owner in the district, even if they didn't live there but owned land, and we still couldn't get them annexed because the General Assembly held us up. So I do believe that you need to have a balance and appreciate that local government has a real role. They're closest to the citizens. They're closest to those issues like annexation, and the state legislature does not need to overreach too heavily. At the same time, it's good to have statewide criteria for meeting annexation thresholds to annex and grow. North Carolina is a state of wonderful small cities and small towns, and part of the reason they have been so effective and so helpful to the citizens is they've been allowed to manage their growth. And so we need to continue to keep in mind that good planning and good growth management is an absolute essential to quality government that serves the people. So I think it's a balance, and I always look to find that balance as I represent the people.
Thank you very much. Mike, you want to fix this?
Thank you. This is probably the first time on the debate stage with all three of you agreements, so better write this one down. I'm in agreement that local governments should have control over their destiny. Local governments know best what they can afford and what they can't afford. The overreach by the state has become an issue in some places. I did work in Charlotte for a number of years and was part of the territorial jurisdiction annexation, and it did create some headaches. With that being said, I think that also with that, the local government and the local individuals should have the voice and final voice on what they want to do with these donut holes, and that should be referendum by those local people, and have that voice with that, and give them a say in what they want to do, what they feel like they can spend or not spend. And so the state, and my state is, I'm in agreement that we have too much overreach. Smaller government is better government. And to say that, with some of the regulations, there's been about 600 that's been reduced. It's been good for small businesses in some of the areas in North Carolina, and it's increased small business. So they have the business climate, personal income, et cetera. Local governments have that mechanism and tool, and the balanced growth, et cetera. I think, and I agree with Mr. Twing with that a plan that comes together formally to help the overall people is a good plan to do. We did that in the fire service, and it applies into our lives today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You all have done a good job so far, but I forgot to remind folks that you have 2 minutes to answer the question, and there, John is with your reminders. So if you get real long-winded, here's our way of control. The main county of Woodbridge, would you like to pose no question? Want me to? Okay. Immediately following the Voting Rights Act, immediately after the Voting Rights Act was weakened in 2013, North Carolina passed a number of new voting restrictions. The federal courts ruled that these provisions, as well as gerrymandered legislative districts, were unconstitutional. Still, some North Carolina leaders have called for closing early voting sites on Sundays and removing them from college campuses. How did you vote, or would you vote, on this legislation, and why? On voter ID, length and location of early voting, same-day registration, and out-of-precinct voting. We're going to begin with you, Joyce and Queen, to take the first step of that.
Thank you. First of all, I agree entirely with our courts. Our legislature, our governor have gone out of their way to disenfranchise voters, to suppress the impact of voters, to suppress young voters, to suppress seniors, to suppress newcomers and people who were first-time voters. They eliminated voting registrations, which I was the Civic Ed Senator of the Year when I was in the Senate, because I pushed for high school registration in all of our public schools, because seniors can vote, most of them, by the time the November election rolls around. And they eliminated that. They eliminated the voting at registration at the DMV. where it was easy for young people who were getting their license to get registered to vote and get started in the civic process. They have gone out of their way to make it difficult to vote. And that is not good for the democracy. It's not good for our society. This last time, the courts, to the great advantage of the citizens, have reinstated a same-day registration and voting in early voting, and they've expanded the early voting hours because it was clearly against certain interests, discriminatory in character. Legislatures should not get to choose their voters. The voters should get to choose their legislators. And I am entirely in favor of, in the upcoming census, to having a bipartisan redistricting process. Because what we've gotten into with big data and these micro census opportunities is we're just allowing legislators to choose their voters rather than the other way around. We need to stop that. Thank you.
Well, this is where the agreements will begin. I'm a proponent and believe in voter ID. I can give a personal relationship to that happened in Swain County in the 2006 election, that a dead person voted in Swain County. She died in Hayden County, and according to the general statutes, the North Carolina medical examiner was supposed to send all of the deaths to the counties to inform the board of elections of those people who died. Well, this lady died in December of 2007. She voted in anyhow, 6 months, bottom line. And the way I found out is her grandson come by to tell me that she had voted. And if you know who voted, you can always find out who votes in election, not how they vote. But there's an end of election report. He informed me of that. I said, I appreciate it. He said, you don't understand, she's dead. I said, well, I'm sorry to hear that. But I did go to Hayden County to get her death certificate to be able to file that challenge with that. And the bottom line is, even with the computers that we have today, someone using her name without proper ID gave her name and voted. So I filed a challenge and actual name was removed. There is a mouthful in this one question, but there's so many parts to it. We have one of the best voting systems in North Carolina. What the judges turned down when we talk about this voter ID. If you're voting for the first time in North Carolina, Illinois, or New York, and you file your information, you have to have a voter ID to show you are who you say you are to vote that first time. So what's the difference of having a voter ID the first time and just later on? Disenfranchisement these days is a very big word that's used for achievement. And that being said is, you've got to have an ID for insurance. You've got to have an ID for going to the pawn shop, and just a whole array of things to have an ID. And it's disenfranchisement, I'll finish the sentence, is that the state will provide for it. I got you. So I finished the sentence. Thank you.
Jane.
That's okay. Well, the 15th Amendment gave the African American population the right to vote. And that didn't work so well for them because there was a poll tax at times and there was a literacy test. And about 51 years ago, there was the Voter Rights Act that the federal government enforced, and North Carolina had to abide by that. If they wanted to make any changes, they were under the burden of proof to make those changes, that they would not infringe on the civil rights of African Americans. In 2013, that standard was lifted, and the General Assembly came out with their own Voter Rights Act, which was very restrictive in terms of time, in terms of same-day registration, in terms of voting out of precinct. It was restrictive, and the League of Women Voters filed a lawsuit. And the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals overturned the Voter Rights Act in North Carolina. So now we have those rights for same-day registration, to extended hours, extended time, voting on Sunday, the rights that we had in the beginning. And that's the way that it should be. I don't think that a person necessarily needs the photo ID. They have already registered to vote, and I think we're good enough as we are in North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to hold your question?
Sure.
Okay.
Duke Energy is acquiring Piedmont Natural Gas as part of its plan to expand its natural gas power plant fleet and invest vast sums of its electric utility ratepayers' money into new fossil fuel infrastructure that will commit to the use of heavy carbon-producing non-renewable resources for the next half-century. This plan flies into the face of dire warnings from the worldwide scientific community that we have to immediately begin phasing out the use of fossil fuels and transition to energy efficiency, solar, wind energy, and other renewable resources rapidly in order to avoid the worst consequences of climate change. Do you agree that this is an urgent problem, and if so, what will you do to stand up to the power of Duke Energy and other fossil fuel interests to confront this problem at the necessary scale to preserve our children's future?
All right. Now you get to take the first one.
Well, I do not believe it is the dire warning from the worldwide scientific community that we in the United States have a gloom and gloom and doom hanging over our heads with a cloud that's going to suffocate us all. The problem is the third world countries that are out there that are using items and fossil fuels, etc., that are polluting the atmosphere worldwide. Weather is one of those items that we cannot control, and man will never control the weather. With that being said, though, good common sense in the use of the dollars that we have for investment into technology to increase the efficiency of everything that we use is important. As far as using the natural gas or the dirty coal burning, that's a good step forward because it has helped in reducing the emissions of gases, emission gases. But as far as making it an immediate threat to where the next 5 or 10 years the world will come to an end, I think it's a little like Chicken Little. The sky is falling, and I don't believe that to be the case. All we need to do is recognize that every time we put up a wind farm or a solar panel farm, we take away farmland for food. We have to have food to eat because we are carbon-based. We also take away land that has potential for making hay for cattle, because we do have people that like animals, like me. Anyhow, point being with all that is the technology is not here at this time to be able to take and say, well, we'll put all our eggs in one basket. It's sort of like the fire department. You have different kinds of ladder companies that serve different purposes. And the same applies to doing this thing with energy. We've got to have different types of energy producing techniques throughout the state and the nation because the areas and geographic areas are different. So whatever we can do to make it all work better, common sense needs to prevail.
Thank you very much.
Well, my opponent gave Duke Energy a $265 million tax break. He also let them off the hook or made it easy for them to clean up the coal ash. You know, when my kids made a mess at home, I made them clean up their own mess, not charge somebody else to clean it up. And also, he took a campaign contribution from Duke Energy. Now, we only have one planet, and if we mess it up, we're going to be in serious trouble. One of the things that concerns me about the use of coal are the health issues with lung problems. And also we know from the coal ash spills of Duke Energy that it pollutes our water. I was in a debate recently with Jim Davis, and he was bragging about giving the people downriver bottled water, and I said it sounded a whole lot to me like Flint, Michigan. But I believe that we need to move toward clean energy as fast as we can. We need solar energy, we need coastal wind energy, we need to look at geothermal energy and move in this direction. European countries have done this, they're successful at it. We don't need to drag our feet. And these solar jobs, et cetera, will generate jobs as well. So let's move on to it and get busy with it.
Thank you for the question. I think the energy policy of this state and this nation is very important going forward for the 21st century. It's not something to take lightly. It is absolutely critical. I think there is big opportunities, and North Carolina has led in alternative energy portfolio requirements for our state. We've led the nation in that. We've gotten a good start at it, but we're a long way from finished. So we need to stay with the course we've taken and expand upon it. There is tons of jobs, lots of jobs in smart energy, in alternative energy, in solar energy. I am an architect. The AIA, the American Institute of Architects, has taken on a challenge called the 2030 Challenge, that buildings designed by 2030 should be self-sufficient. There is enough solar energy, wind, etc., around a building to heat, cool, and light it. And we need to move in that direction. And there's lots of good reasons, good economic reasons to do this. Innovation matters. It creates jobs, it creates value add to the society, and we definitely have climate change problems. So as you innovate with alternative, sustainable energy sources, and you move out of particularly coal and fossil fuels, and you transition, it will be a transition, it won't be instant, but it will be a transition that you need to incent the higher point, which is sustainable and energy that's like solar, which is virtually free once you put in the infrastructure. So it is good for North Carolina, it's good for our energy, it's good for the cost of energy. Lower cost energy is a stronger economy, and alternative energies are lower cost and sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you.
The 7 western counties of North Carolina have some of the highest poverty rates of the state. Taken together, the regional poverty rate is 19% compared to the state poverty rate of 16.4%, and the national poverty rate of 13.5%. If elected, how do we plan to reduce poverty in North Carolina?
Well, first of all, poverty is a very complex issue. And no one wants to wake up in the morning thinking, I want to be poor. I was in a forum recently with Jim Davis, and he said all it took to get people out of poverty is jobs. I wish it were that simple. But some of the things that I think have happened in this state that have hurt our low-income people is taking away the earned income tax credit. That would have helped low-wage earners have more money, and particularly for single women and hard-working families. Another thing, the North Carolina General Assembly turned aside the Medicaid expansion. That would help our poor people. That would help 6,000 in this region. It would have created 391 jobs and brought in about $155 million in revenue. So those are things that can help with poverty. Another thing, we need good education beginning at those early years so that our more impoverished children are ready for school and can compete at a higher level. We also need internet services here so that folks can get on the internet and get jobs, and that will help as well. There's a lot that we can do. One of the most exciting things I've seen is Circles of Hope. That started in Haywood County, where a person who is impoverished, they want to move up, and they have a group of people around them who help them to get a bank account or to do the things that they need to do. And a lot of times, impoverished people just don't have the knowledge or the resources and know how to get out of poverty. Circles of Hope is tremendous, and I hope we can extend that across the state. Thank you.
Thank you. A very important question, very difficult question for 2 minutes. But what I will say is my thumbnail pitch on poverty is in the last generation, my father's generation, the greatest generation, the post-World War II generation, the GI Bill was a fabulous anti-poverty program. It was free higher education for the GIs, and that was about everybody that was able-bodied at that time. I mean, there was hundreds of millions that got benefits, and equity building housing, farmer home housing, low cost interest to buy a home and to build value, and good jobs, a rising economy, good wages. You know, not a low education economy like this legislature and governor are pursuing, and a low wage economy like they're pursuing. It's protection so you don't fall out of your path to prosperity. A rising middle class. Nobody wants to be poor, they want to rise. But if you go bankrupt with a medical bill, which you do if you have no insurance, and you have a car wreck and you show up at the emergency room, they will send you a bill, and you will get a judgment at the courthouse, and you will be in a difficult area to buy housing. What did the George W. Bush do to home equity? They assaulted it. They let the greedy banks and mortgage lenders have at it. We've got to restore our commitment to education, our commitment to home equity, and our commitment to good jobs with good wages, and maybe we can come back to that question on how to do that. Thank you.
Swain County is one of the most unique counties between Jackson and Haywood. 90% of Swain County is governmental. With that being said, the number of people to be employed would be rather low compared to that of Jackson and Haywood. According to August unemployment rates, Swain County, 6,900 people were employed, 371 not employed. How does that affect the poverty rate? When you put people to work and you have a low employment rate, it decreases the poverty rate because the people who are at work, they are getting a gainful employment with a check. A thing I would like to see occur for Swain, Jackson, and Haywood counties is to encourage small business incubators. I've seen these work. We've had one in Swain County before, Veterans Boulevard. And a small business incubator, and I'm not talking about raising chickens and such, but it can do that. The small business incubator is for those individuals that want to start up a small business but lack the skills, knowledge, and the know-how to do that very thing. As we know, Bill Gates, he's one of the richest men in the world, and he started one in a garage. Small business incubators that encourage small business growth, to encourage small businesses or individuals to go into business is a great help to do that, and it gets people on their feet even more. Another thing about additional education is being brought about. 64% of the current state budget is for education. How much is that? We've seen the grades in North Carolina increase. Our teacher pay has increased. We reduced the personal income tax. We reduced the corporate income tax also to encourage small businesses. So across the board, legislature, the governor, and Senate and House. We've seen things get better compared to the 20 years before, when unemployment statewide was 17%.
Thank you very much. I want you to just look around the room for just a moment, and you may be a little disappointed that not more people are here. But I wanted to let you know that this event is being live streamed and recorded, so hundreds more people are able to attend this event via technology. We're going to move at this point to some questions that those of you in the audience have submitted. And we're going to do just like we did, keep circling around to answer these questions. This one comes from Robert Jumper with the Cherokee. Should video sweepstakes gambling be illegal in North Carolina?
I am absolutely against video sweepstakes gambling in North Carolina. It is a predatory product. It's addictive. It strips vulnerable people of their livelihoods. Their families are distraught by it. It is a awful scourge to our state. We have worked very hard in the legislature. I have always supported restricting it, eliminating it, and making it illegal across our state. So I am strong on this for, I think, real positive reasons. The video lobby that likes to come down and pour tens of thousands of dollars into political campaigns to move this is just a special interest that's truly not a public interest. So it's worthy of the solid fight against it.
Okay, thank you.
Video gambling in North Carolina was banned and curtailed by the state legislature so they could encourage the state lottery. That's why we lost, and when I say lost, video gambling, as far as being a scourge, even the lottery is a scourge on the citizens of North Carolina. It's a matter of free will. The matter of free will is do you want to play or do you not want to play? The guys that's calling into the education lottery in North Carolina was debated in 2013 and 14. I was at some of those committee hearings, and with that being said is, the word was, let's keep it education lottery because more people will spend money buying lottery tickets if they don't go for education. What we don't know is the amount of expense goes on the education lottery, this is so-called. That money goes into the general budget. That money is not just in the code for education. There's exorbitant salaries to the lottery director, and with that advertising that they do with that. So if we want to take and have it at the ban on the video camping, then the ban should also extend to the lottery. But since it's free enterprise system, it's a free enterprise system that people make choices what they want to do.
I'm not in favor of video gambling, video poker. And I would work to stop that as best I could. I don't see that it helps folks. It takes money out of people's pockets. They spend a lot of time at that endeavor. I think there are better things for them to do.
This question comes from Ashley Smith. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians is currently looking at options for economic diversification. Such options will not only affect tribal members, but members of the whole state. In what way are you willing to assist in these ventures?
You next? No, I'm going to first. You would
Yeah, you get this.
Behind this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. The tribe here in western North Carolina is one of our economic engines, without question. And it's not just gaming. Gaming has been a very strong source of revenue for them, but they have branched out in so many ways. Their healthcare system is leading. They're doing a great job with that. The trout fishing program that they have has been a leader, and they are being followed by other counties. I've been a big promoter of trout fishing all across western North Carolina. We now have a $200 million a year trout fishing industry. It rivals the sport fishing on the coast. And we've developed all that in the last decade by preserving our waters and bringing our trout waters back so they can sustain trout, and then develop the industry following. Lots of good jobs, lots of good local men and women leading trout fishing, running trout fishing shops and all. But I would be very supportive of the tribe, the foundation, the Cherokee Foundation is a fabulous economic engine on innovative things, particularly around heritage. I think Western North Carolina is a destination, and we're a destination because we have wonderful heritage. We have the Appalachian heritage, we have the Cherokee heritage, we have the natural heritage. We are a heritage destination for the nation, and we can work together as a region with leadership from the tribe. So there are a lot of ways that we can work together culturally and economically to expand opportunities across our region.
There's a good advantage to the quality boundary of the tribal nation we have in Swain County, and that's the land area. And to capitalize on the working together with that, we're familiar, and I'm sure we all are, Research Triangle Park and how innovative that area of the state can be. A corporation and coordination between the tribe, the reservation, the state, and educational entities throughout the state, we can have a Research Triangle Park location here in Swain and Jackson County. And it would do several things: allow for innovation. It also encourage jobs, and it would encourage growth in the community. And the growth in the community would be filtering all the way down to homes and businesses to be able to support that Research Triangle Park. So I would be a supporter, and we want to see that come to per se and to fruition, that we could see something from the east in the western crime. And another good thing about that is it's not smokestack technology. There's no pollution to the atmosphere. There's no problems with that, etc. The thing is, it's buildings, and I have seen, and we have seen recently, we have some of the most beautiful buildings in the state here at the Cherokee High School, the Cultural Arts Center, etc. So tying that all together, that would be a great thing.
Thank you.
I'm very much in favor of working with the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians to improve these areas, our western area. And I see it particularly in two areas, and number one would be health care. Graham County does not have an overnight health facility. Neither does Clay County have a health facility as they need. Any help in those areas, I think, would be wonderful for this region and would strengthen the region. Another area I think where we could, the Eastern Band could be of help would be in bringing more internet services within this region, if they have some interest in that. And also cultural resources. I like what they've done in Clay County and having an exhibit of how the Cherokees lived in that area. But definitely, I would be willing to sit at the table and discuss what we could do to improve this region. It belongs to all of us.
Thank you very much. The next question comes from Dr. David Trigg. And he says this question is for Jim Davis, Jay Hips, and Joe Sunny. I think you should highlight on this. The question is this: North Carolina Medicaid was a model program that was nationally recognized and successful program for McCrory and Republicans in the legislature claimed North Carolina Medicaid was broken. Republicans claimed they would fix Medicaid. So far,
had 3 healthcare exchanges in North Carolina, we're now down to 1. The cost of healthcare has escalated and has just become almost unattainable unless you've got a good 401k or 457. Blue Cross Blue Shield advises that in 2017, the premiums will go up anywhere from 24 to 26%. When you have no competition, you can set prices whatever rate you want to, and that's what's happening. As far as expanding the Medicaid, any monies that's set, and we had this conversation last night already. If you owe the federal government money, it's like owing money to a bank. If you buy a car, somebody's got to pay for it. Is it your money or the bank's money? The thing about it is that money that was sent to the state, or to the federal government from the state, was to pay for those items that was necessary to be paid for. So there's no free money. And understand, there is no free money for the federal government. Anytime you get something for nothing, there's always a string attached. And that's the way it will be with that. So the North Carolina General Assembly, legislature, the governor, they're working with that together. I want to be part of that in 2016, 17, to be able to take and see if we can get the funding. And we are getting funding as far as the money that the state has put back on the rainy day fund. At some point, when it reaches $1 billion, I'm sure the interest in that would pay for this Medicaid expansion that keeps being talked about on free money.
Well, I think it's a travesty that we didn't accept the Medicaid expansion. We had a good program here, and we could have built on that. We had a wonderful way of billing and taking care of the services that were given. As a result of not taking Medicaid, we are losing lives. We lose about 6,000 every year in this state. It would have also brought in a lot of jobs and revenue, as well as helping 500,000 of our neediest people. I think one of the reasons that the North Carolina General Assembly did not accept Medicaid is they wanted to figure out a way so that they could privatize Medicaid, and it hasn't been approved that way. And I think if they'd been Frank Sinatra, they would have been singing, they wanted to be singing "We Did It Our Way," and that hasn't been approved. I think the song that they need to develop is "We Missed the Boat." I hope in time, though, that we can expand Medicaid in this state and take advantage of it for our neediest citizens.
Thank you for that question, because I think it is one of the most important questions of this election cycle. North Carolina was leading the nation in Medicaid administration. We were having higher results, better outcomes at lower costs than any state in the nation, because we had developed a provider-based network that was focused on the patient in the community with all their providers. And we led the nation in this. We modeled it, and we had great outcomes. You're exactly right. The legislature just took over. They declared it broken. It wasn't broken. We were the #1 leader. That is, we're talking about waste, fraud, and abuse. So the waste is $7 billion so far, $5 billion at stake in this election of dollars that we all paid. They're our dollars. They're not federal government dollars. They're not state government dollars. They're not local government dollars. They're the citizens' dollars. We pay taxes to get services. The state of North Carolina's governor, McCory, and this Republican-led legislature is just on ideological grounds denying our federal dollars to help our citizens, the same citizens they represent. So it is waste beyond compare. Who has ever wasted $7 billion and are running on it is a good deal? No, it is waste, it is fraud, and it is abuse. The abuse is, the Harvard just came out with a study, well over 1,100 a year are dying because they don't have the health care provided that we have already paid for. It's being denied. Lives are being lost jobs, our economy. My district, this 119 district, would have 1,000 more jobs providing health care for 15,000 of our citizens if we expand to Medicaid. We need to do it now.
Thank you. This question comes from Wilbur Paul. He says, please clarify how you distinguish how one manages in the private sector industry as opposed to managing in government.
Is this mine? Who did the last one? I'm glad to start with that. Well, I am a private sector employer, entrepreneur, small business owner. I'm an architect. My wife has been a physician, worked for herself up to the last few years of her life, the first 20 years. So I get the private sector. Private sector is, we add value. We promote ourselves as a business to add value. We look for customers and we try to make a profit. Our goals are profit driven, and usually you get to profit by building a better mousetrap. That's the way I go about it. I try to add more value where I can. On the government side, there are a lot of things that aren't necessarily profitable that are very needed. You could look at, education is one of them. You educate everybody so everybody will be capable to compete. If you're a business person, you keep your trade secrets to yourself. You're educating nobody. You want the market share yourself. But if you're looking for the public good, you're announcing all the good ideas that need to be developed and move forward and so forth. So the public interest, the common good, the general welfare is what we, the people, have government for. It's why we have our constitutional system to build those items of the general welfare. Now, the general welfare does include the private sector, but there is a role for both, and I support the role for both, including common sense incentives and common sense regulation on the private sector by the public sector for the public good and the general welfare.
I have experiences with both. In the private sector, I was working very independently to do workshops, math and science, and covered about 38 states. I had to look after every bit of everything that I did. It was tough, but I enjoyed it. Working for the public sector when I was as a teacher and working with the State Department of Public Instruction, a lot was there provided for me. I was part of a team. I enjoyed that. I felt like that I was doing a lot for the good of this region in terms of science education at that particular time. But they're both essential. We need to support both. There are times that maybe things are better done through the private sector, other times I think the public sector. But they're both important aspects of our economy.
What would you say to that?
Well, having worked for the fire department and being part of a team, it's always interesting to find out how the other guy wants to do the same job and make it easier. That applies to public and government. A lot of times the government makes waste and creates waste by overutilizing intellect. Well, common sense should always prevail with that. And that to say is, let the government get out of the way and let the workers do the job, and it'll get done quicker, faster, and more economically. And that's just the bottom line. I also worked at community college for 14 years as director of fire and rescue division. And there it was very interesting also in the teaching and working with the students, because fire fighting is very dynamic. Something's happening going on all the time during an incident until it's mitigated. And the bottom line of that is everybody has to work together. They have to be part of that team and work together for a common goal. And get the chief out of the way. We found the fires that go out a lot quicker sometimes. And there's sort of a euphemism with that, but personal experience once, I can tell you we had one of those big, long warehouse buildings on fire, and they had gone from the third floor, which that's a booth of firefighters, a bunch of fire trucks. They called our crew in, and we went in, and when we got done, they said, dang, we never seen nothing like that. What it boiled down to is we utilized what equipment we had on our truck. Common sense failed, we used foam and put the fire out in a matter of minutes, whereas we'd already been there for hours, and it just had gotten bigger. So common sense with local government, common sense with private business, and the joint force between the two work together as a team.
Thank you so much. We have time for 2 more questions from the audience, and I'm going to start with one from Ann Hibbert. She says, what is your position on background checks for purchasers of firearms? Polls have reported 90% in favor of background checks. What is your opinion?
Well, I had to have a background check when I got my gun. And I think it's a good thing, because we don't want guns in the hands of criminals or guns in the hands of people who may have some mental illness and could hurt us. So I have no problem with background checks. In fact, I think we ought to have background checks on teachers as well. When I became a nurse, I had to go through several background checks. And I think it's good. I think it's good to know who's working with our people. I think it's good to know who has possession of those firearms. Thank you.
I think it's generally for concealed carry that we seek the background checks for, and I voted this session to continue that practice because our sheriffs do a very good job of screening folks to check on their mental stability, to check on recent domestic violences before they get that pistol, to check, to work against the criminal element and the terrorist element. It's hard to do that, but background checks are one of the tools. Our Sheriff's Association is strongly behind it, and you know, in the past, I can tell you, it used to be discriminatory. It was good old Southern practice to keep African Americans from getting pistols. But in today's society, it's being administered fairly. It's being administered professionally. It's getting the job done, and I think the public is safer because of it. All that is part of our Second Amendment, which asks for a well-regulated militia. The right to bear arms is a very important right to our citizens, but they want common sense to prevail, and generally, I think the public accepts the idea that background checks are a reasonable way to continue and protect that Second Amendment. So I think as long as it's not abused, as long as it's thoughtful and professional, it is a very good tool to protect the public.
Thank you.
I am a life member of the NRA. I've been endorsed by the NRA, National Rifle Association, Second Amendment of North Carolina, grassroots GRNC. Background checks in today's world are an absolute necessity. The thing about that is we have such an infiltration of individuals coming to our country, threatening their lives and the very families we hold dear. An armed citizen is a free citizen. An unarmed citizen is a subject. With that being said, I would like to see an expansion of law-abiding citizens to be able to have expansion on concealed carry. It is proven that gun-free zones only work for criminals. And when the gun-free zone is advertised, that criminal knows that's a place to take and do their dirty work. How do I know that? I worked at Fire Station 31 in compression 11 when we were 1. didn't rob the station. When they asked him later, why did you pick the fire station? He said, well, they got signs on the doors that say they're not allowed to have weapons. I'm not scared of going in there. It's not like going to somebody's house. So the bottom line is shows that just the fact of not having it advertised as a gun-free zone makes the criminal wonder. And with expanded concealed carry with a background check instead of the law-abiding citizens to protect themselves from others that would do harm. And I've also been endorsed by the North Carolina Police and Evidence Association, largest law enforcement group in North Carolina. And with that group there, believing in safety for all citizens, it's imperative that we keep our citizens safe with all our orders against those that we're looking to harness and our families.
Thank you. Our last question applies to so many of these other questions. It's from Robert C. Everyone knows there are people who could vote but don't. Low voter turnout may be directly related to several factors, like unkept promises, disbelief that democracy really works, a lack of willingness and commitment on the part of municipalities to support voter turnout. Should the North Carolina Board of Elections have in its budget a staff position to address low voter turnout? And if so, would you support such a staff position?
I do think we need to promote civic engagement across the board. And so I would be in favor of our Board of Elections doing such public relations, educational programs. I think it's their role. I think it's a very smart thing to do. All I will tell the citizens, I know many are frustrated. If you're not frustrated, you're not paying attention. But this is your democracy. Democracy is a messy business. You don't have to worry about the 1% if the 99% vote. You don't have to worry if you inform yourself and take your citizenship seriously. So, but I'm in favor of strong civic education in our public schools and our public universities. I'm in favor of building that civic society that builds a great democracy. We have to realize it is an institutional development. It is part of our American fabric. We do not need to let it slide. I think we need to work on the new internet media world where people do get isolated within their own circles of information and they don't get out of it. It's hard to say what really makes this cycle so different. But I do think we need to be thinking about it as a society, and I certainly think the Board of Elections should be thinking about it and how to move the needle in the direction of a greater franchise, and we should stop disenfranchising and suppressing vote. Period.
Thank you.
I would be in favor of having someone in the Board of Elections who was working to educate the public and get out the vote. I think people become overwhelmed during election time. They're hearing so much, and it's hard to ferret the truth from fiction. And I think it would be good to help people learn to evaluate issues that come up, to know what the true issue is. And I would be very much in favor of that, yes.
I don't think we need to make government any bigger, and we don't need to be hired someone else to do government. We each have a personal responsibility for our lives, and we need to take charge of that. And it's not somebody else to tell us when to breathe, when to eat, and things of that nature. We have a tremendous number of volunteers in North Carolina that are currently in this election cycle that are taking and making phone calls to individuals of the That being said, I have an individual that's assisted me in making phone calls to all those folks that have a phone number listed on the voter information page. Have someone else in the state government come in and tell counties how other elections. I think the county board's elections in Swain, Jackson, Hickman County has been doing a tremendous job in this election year of getting the information out, making community meetings and informing people about their privilege and right to vote and how to vote and how to get registered to vote. And if they can't make the election day, or they can't make one stop, they're informed that they can make a absentee ballot request to get a ballot that way. We have it so easy, and it's just, I think we're making it so easy people come out and say that that's all they're not voting. They got to find some kind of excuse to escape their own personal responsibility. And I think the personal responsibility needs to return back to the American, as Mr. Twing said, American fabric of today.
Thank you. We have come to the end of the question and answer period, and I'd like you to give a big hand to these brave people. I have some special thanks for others as well. I want to include in our recognition the Eastern Band and Cherokee Tribal Council, the Cherokee Central Board, Vice Principal, Cherokee Schools, Greg Barker, the Director of the Chief Joyce Dugan Cultural Arts Center, Yona Wade, and his assistant, Jay Winchester, who provided above and beyond for many of our requests. To all of the above for the wonderful use of this state-of-the-art facility and their support throughout the planning. To Mary Kerr, Treasurer of the Cherokee Healing and Wellness Coalition, for her wise counsel and support throughout. To Editor Robert Jumper of the Cherokee One Feather for his support and publicity before and after. And to our co-sponsors. Let's give our co-sponsors a hand as well. For its active support, both before and after, to the Macon County League of Women Voters, to the Canary Coalition, and to Western North Carolina Occupy. Thank you very much. That concludes our event for tonight, and I just want to remind you to leave this space as clean as we found it, and to invite you to share coffee and conversation in the lobby, or to have further conversations with our candidates or our sponsors. Thank you very much, and good night.
Good day, my friend.
Yes. Quentin. Yes, you came out to my house and photographed the craft of noodles. And I just loved your article.
Thank you for having us.
I've been keeping track of you since, and I was so pleased to see